I think one important theme in this episode of the Amanda Show that I noticed when I was working on it is how Africa is really important in the world. Forget what they tell you. So, no, sometimes they just say, I've seen a lot of people say this online, particularly on X, formerly Twitter. I've seen a lot of people say this, and they tell you that Africa has just been taking aid. Africans, they are freeloaders. Africans are lazy. They add nothing to the global economy. Blah 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 blah. All they do is take. Yet, when you watch how the governments move, the different nations, their governments move, nothing is further from the truth. They look at Africa like we need Africa. And I'm saying that because this second segment of this show, the Foreign Ministry of Denmark said as much. Now, let's get into the topic. Now, the Foreign Ministry of Denmark is looking to improve relations with African countries. And one of the things they are doing is they're opening more new diplomatic offices in African nations like Rwanda, Senegal, and Tanzania. Now, as they're opening up these new embassies in these African nations, they're also beefing up current embassies in Nigeria, um, Kenya, South Africa, Egypt, and Ghana. What they're saying is that these new embassies, they want to beef up with new stuff, and they want to use it to explore and spread their reach across the region. So clearly, South Africa is going to the beefed up Denmark's embassy in South Africa is going to take care of Southern Africa so they can improve their relations with Southern African nations. The one in Kenya clearly is going to take care of East Africa. The one in Nigeria, obviously, West Africa. The one in Egypt, Northern Africa. So this is what Denmark is saying. Well, as they're doing this, they're closing their embassies in Burkina Faso and Mali. Well, obviously, now we already know that nations have become well, those nations are not really the part they've taken to put it mildly. The part they've taken, they are not really friends of the West. Let me put it mildly. So they are closing their diplomatic missions in those nations. But I'm bringing this thing up because of a statement that was made by the Foreign Ministry of Denmark. One of the things, this is why I'm bringing up this. Yeah, okay. Before I get to that, they're also going to set up that Denmark is setting up programs to bring in more students from Africa to come and learn in Denmark and maybe get jobs in Denmark after graduation. So this is a move to improve relations with African countries. Now back to that statement. I'm going to quote the Foreign Ministry of Denmark said something very interesting that I want us to discuss today. They said, one of the most important foreign policy questions of this century will be whether African countries will orient themselves more towards the East or the West. So, what I'm taking from this is that we have not realized it, but in the mind of the world, right, there is a game going on, a diplomatic game going on, and Africa is on the table. That's how I say it. It's possible that I'm reading more into it than it actually is. Very possible. But the way I'm seeing it is that there is a game going on. Africa is on the table. So the question now is, according to the Foreign Ministry of Denmark, will Africa face the West or will it face the East? My own is, why is it that Africa cannot do both? Do you get? Because in some people's minds, this just has to be is either also the other guys. I don't think so. So as most players in the world are thinking, we want to pull Africa into a camp. We want to pull Africa into a camp. Let Africa come east. Let them come west. As they are doing that, Africa should be more interested in working for Africa's interests. Do you understand? Africa should be more interested in working for Africa's interests and work with everybody. Don't pick sides. It's always better because some people East may give better deals. Then some deals that you can get from the West, you may not get it from the East. So don't burn your bridges. Work with everybody. So as I was researching for this topic, one thing that struck out to me, like when I was reading, it was a thought that came to my mind. Like I said, that's why I said this section with this segment is what I said. Many times we tend to look at Africa as because poverty is really strong in Africa. So Africa is not something to really put your mind to. Oh, it's just exists. It's just this. It's just that. It's not really an important player. But the more I was looking at the story, it dawned on me that Africa is a very important region in the world. You, I'm saying to you, you African listening to me, you are a very important region in the world, and maybe even the most important. Because when you think of the most important region in global affairs, and rightly so, you may be considering United States, China, Russia. Okay, but sometimes a place like Africa that it seems like, oh, they're just their leaders, not the whole country. Their leaders are just begging for aid, help us, help us, help us. A place like Africa, you don't think it's so important. But when you watch the way global leaders move, you understand how important Africa is. I even suspect that Africa is probably the most important region in global affairs on the planet. So all that idea, all that propaganda to make you think that you are worthless, all that propaganda to make you think that you offer nothing to the world, you need to begin to remove that thing from your head. Because if you listen to what they tell you about your continent, Africa, and even Africans, when you begin to listen to what they tell you, and you will then watch how they move. It's contrary. If Africa was so worthless, if Africa added nothing to the world, if the world does not need Africa, in fact they just carry Africa just because they want to be nice and loving. If it was so, the way they run around us like bees and honey, the way they run around Africans, they will not be doing it. If something is really worthless, you leave it alone. If Africa was really worthless, they would have left us alone. But no, their businesses are here, they will not leave. Many of them are engaged in some really questionable behavior on the continent, behavior they will not engage in their own country, but they still stay here. Their politicians, they will not leave us. They will, in fact, go as far as putting puppets in our different countries to make sure that our countries give them the leaders that are favorable to them. Do you get me? And many times when it's favorable to them, it's at the detriment of the respective countries. If Africa was so worthless, the way they are running, even this China Africa summit we just saw, we will not have it. Why would the Chinese be calling African nations to come and be doing summits? Why? Because they want to spend money on summits. They don't know what they want to use their money to do. We saw the Russia Africa summit that took place last year. You think it's just because the Russians they don't have anything they want to use their money to do, so they're calling the pesky Africans to come and have conversation. You think it's because Africa is important. And I dare say Africa is the most strategic region on the planet today. So I'm saying this so that you begin to remove all that idea. Many times we got so brainwashed and propagandized. We received a lot of that propaganda that we began to see ourselves as nothing, as inferior. Begin to remove that thing from your head because when you see the way their leaders play on ground, it's very different from what they tell you in their media or even the textbooks they give us to read. It's very different. Because tell me, how many continents on the planet today can boast about growing population? How many? Around the world, everybody, the major conversation they are having in the West, even in the East, in places like Japan, South Korea, the major conversation they are having is declining population. It's a problem. Africa doesn't have that problem. How many of them can complain or can boast about such large number of able-bodied men and women, young people? In Africa, the average age, let me use Nigeria, the average Nigerian is 18 years old. I believe in Ghana is 19. Some countries in Africa, the average age you see 17, you see 15 young people. But if you look to the to other parts of the world, you see average age 35. I think China is 30 something. Average age 35. You see some 38. In Japan, for example, more people die than are born. Did you hear me? I don't think you understand the gravity of this thing. In Japan has more dying people, old people who are dying from natural causes, of course. More old people are dying than babies born. You are seeing nations are beginning to, I think in South Korea is also there are some regions are pay if I think South Korea, but I'm not exactly sure. But I'm thinking in South Korea, where the government is even doing matchmaking and encouraging new couple, to move to rural areas and start to focus on family. They are paying you. Just come and have family, will pay you. In Russia, The government is um, giving benefits to families that have more than 3 children. So some certain taxes that you pay is reduced. Why? Just to encourage people to have more children. But we in Africa, we have them plenty. No region in the world, few regions in the world can boast about this thing. Why do you think no the conversation we're having now, why do you think Denmark is saying, oh please come, your students should come? Because they're hoping that when the students come, some of them will stay. And when they stay, they mingle with the society, they assimilate into the society and become part of them and have babies. That way they can boost their workforce. You think that Canada is doing um this thing that Canada is doing, that we should for permanent residency. You think Canada is doing it just because, oh, they just want to help Africans? You think? No. Canada is doing it because Canada has an aging population. The land is not full. Many places are empty. So they're bringing in people that will add to their economy, that will add to their growth, but they're bringing in people to make up for the places that are falling short. But we have that thing in Africa. Our population should be our pride. But if it's a population of poor people, that's where the problem is. That's really where the problem is, because a population of poor people, it might as well be a nuisance. You get? But we don't have that problem here. That's number one. Number two, our resources critical. They keep telling Africa has not added anything to the world. The iPhones that all these people are using. Where do you think they get the resources to make them? What do you think? Do you understand me? So with all these benefits Africa has given to us by God naturally, no nation can dare to ignore Africa. Tell them when there was someone I that was some I think it was last year. And the person was doing this normal talking down on Africa and the rest and like they do. And the person was like, "Oh, Africa has added nothing to the world. Africa offers nothing. Blah blah blah. Oh, every time you ask for aid, blah blah." And I said, "I dare you to tell your leaders to leave our countries. I dare you." I dare you. You think that France, after kicking them out of Mali and Burkina Faso and Niger, you think they're happy? You're seeing them run now to Madagascar. I dare them to leave. If Africa is so bad, they should get out. They cannot. So I'm saying this not because of them. They already realize it. I'm saying it because of you. All that lies you have been told. The Africans are worthless. That Africa offers nothing to the world. And you know the story, you know the line already. Take it and remove it from your head. Remove it from your head because it's a lie. Instead, by the time you watch the way these outsiders move, by the time you watch the way they move, you will have pride in you take pride in your respective country, you take pride in the continent, and then you put your heart to transforming the story of this continent. I'm telling you. So I don't have an issue. The foreign ministry of Denmark has clearly told you that where Africa decides to face is the most important conversation in foreign policy of the century, to show you how important you are. That's what they just told us, how important you are. Let me know what you think about this development with them. I welcome Denmark. I really don't have an issue with them. But I'm saying this so that you would realize that the China Africa Forum that just happened, this Denmark adjusting things and strengthening their diplomatic missions in Africa is not because if you were so unimportant, they would not be doing these things. So I brought this topic today so that you see how important Africa is. And that means how important you are. And that should make you throw your cap, throw your weight, throw your everything into this fight to bring Africa out of poverty. Let me know what you think about this development in the comment section below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share this video with your friends and families so that we can reach more people across Africa. As we are saying, as we are insisting that this country, this continent, our respective countries, we are going to develop it, we are going to transform it, and we are going to make it a global envy. What the Chinese did, and the whole world said, "Wow, Africa, we can do much more," and the whole world will shout even a bigger wow. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Thank you so much for joining me.